Can you tell me what's going on?
Just put your hands behind your back before you end up on the ground.
I'm trying to put.
I am going into work, my man. Why are you trying to pull me over as I...
Hey, don't touch, bro.
The police are the initial faces of law enforcement and commence the criminal justice process and thus hold significant responsibility for functioning law and order. But what happens when the purveyors of justice end up on the wrong side of the law themselves? Who will hold them accountable? Who will judge the judges? Luckily, as in these cases, the dirty cops soon realized the consequences of their actions would haunt them for life. Imagine that you're on a night out, having a good time drinking with your work colleagues. Now, suddenly you wake up the next day in a prison holding cell, being grilled by police officers for the murder charge of your boss. Sounds straight out of a movie thriller, doesn't it? This is exactly what happens with Detective Michael Neely, who was found in a hotel room sitting on top of his police chief's dead body. Mike and his chief, Johnny Miller, were away at a conference, and one night they decided to go out for drinks. But after a long night of drinking and revelries, the morning brought Mike crashing back to reality as he woke up in police custody and was taken for questioning in the same room where he had taken other suspects for the previous 10 years of his life.
So tell me, Mike, you guys flew out of Tulsa?
Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City, okay. And to Pensacola?
Yep.
Was it a direct flight?
Nope.
Where'd you guys stop?
Houston.
Houston. And then from there?
Got to the hotel and that's it.
It seemed that Mike was actually pretty calm over the whole ordeal. He was very cooperative, giving brief answers to all the questions by the detectives. Or maybe he was trying to be calculative and didn't want to give too much information all at once. He himself was a detective after all and knew the tactics of police questioning.
Any problems or anything going on in the crowd? Just normal dinner or what?
Normal.
Any drinks there or just dining with?
A couple beers.
Was it a early dinner, late dinner, or what?
Pretty early. It was I don't think it was dark yet.
Tell me what you guys did once you got back to the hotel.
That's about it. Just watched football game. That was a Dallas game starting.
But it soon became clear that Mike was not being completely honest about the events of the fatal night. He told the officers that they had watched a Dallas football game and drank a couple of beers. But in reality, the level of alcohol in their blood test reports revealed a much clearer picture. The amount of alcohol in their blood was around 0.3, which is considered to be dangerous, and that could result in the loss of consciousness or even death.
Tests reveal that both men's blood alcohol levels were around or above 0.3. To put that in perspective, a level of 0.4 is widely considered to be a fatal dose, and 0.3 will likely result in alcohol poisoning, a condition that can lead to death and loss of consciousness.
Mike was processing all the information that the officers gave him very calmly, or maybe he was still hungover. He pleaded that he didn't remember anything from the night, contradicting his own statement that he only had a couple of beers. The detectives then asked him if he remembered any of the hotel staff coming up to their room and telling them to tone it down a bit. Mike replied that he did not.
Do you remember hotel staff or hotel employee coming up and telling you guys keep it down?
I don't remember that.
He then asked the detectives about who had died, as he still wasn't quite sure why he was being questioned. The detectives told him that it was Chief Miller who was murdered during the night.
I mean, I know you're asking me questions, but can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, homicide. Who is dead?
Dead.
Dead.
Yes, sir.
Mike was initially not told that he was brought in for the murder of his chief, Johnny Miller. He clearly didn't remember it either due to being heavily drunk the night before, or maybe he was pretending to not know initially. Whatever the case, Mike decided to invoke his right to remain silent.
I guess I probably don't have anything else to say then. I've got nothing to say to you.
The detective figured out that they would have to switch up tactics as they were dealing with a man who was well versed in the law and procedures of police questioning. So they decided to slowly draw him in and open him up to talking.
You'd be in charge of second-degree murder.
Okay. I had no idea what I was being charged with.
Yeah, you're in charge of second-degree murder, and you're fixing to be booked in the Escambia County Jail with no bond. And we've already notified your wife.
Okay. The victim, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
The detectives here are very persuasive and use all their years of knowledge, know-how, and psychology in dealing with criminals. They first lure Mike in by telling him about the serious charges he is facing and that he has no option left. They then try to get on his side and offer him an explanation in return for his compliance. Mike, who at this point was clearly not thinking clear in his tense situation, was desperate to know more despite him trying to appear composed from the outside. His stand immediately changes and he offers to continue to talk to the detectives in exchange for more information and clarity. The detectives take him through the entire sequence of events of the night. They tell Mike about the first noise complaint from the neighbors, the second complaint just before 10 p.m. about excessive noise. And later on, when the staff entered his room using a duplicate key, they found Mike sitting on the chief's chest with the chief's face beaten in. Mike tells the detectives that he did not recall any of it, and that he held no grudges or animosity against the chief whatsoever. Surprisingly though, Mike still carries his calm demeanor even after the detectives tell him about the circumstances of the chief's death. He also doesn't show any remorse or acknowledgement as well. The detectives try to get him to share more details that he can remember from the night, but Mike just sits there in silence or disbelief. Michael Neely calmly accepts his fate and doesn't even try to contest any further. He was later tried and sentenced to life imprisonment on account of second-degree murder. Whether Mike intentionally murdered his chief or whether he did it unknowingly under the influence of alcohol, you be the judge of that. Meanwhile, Mike's actions meant that he would have to spend the remainder of his life behind bars. As key representatives of the state, the integrity of the police in all societies is pivotal to retaining public trust in the rule of law and the preservation of internal security. When police corruption is exposed or is perceived by the public to be prevalent, confidence in and communal relations with the police force become disjointed. The poor credibility of the police also negatively impacts on the legitimacy of the government. A holistic anti-corruption strategy is needed to fight police corruption. This can combine commissions of inquiries, meritocratic appointments, pay reform, a rotation strategy, and strengthening accountability. In another case of the general public being wrongfully harassed and abused by officers in law enforcement, we see a 40-year-old black male, Jamal Williams, sitting in his car having lunch during lunch break. Suddenly, out of nowhere, multiple Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies surround his vehicle and demand that he get out of the car.
You live around here?
Hey, don't touch,
bro. Relax. Hey, you match the description of somebody, okay, that just committed a burglary in the area. Okay, you're on camera, so don't step out of the car.
Is your body cam on?
It's on.
Yeah.
Caught completely off guard by this development, Jamal requested the deputies to explain why he needed to get out of his car. Instead of explaining anything to him, Deputy Bruni de Oliveira and Deputy Alexander Tavali forced their way into his car to drag him out and detain him.
Sir,
Step on out, dude. You're on camera, dude, so don't do anything dumb, okay?
Hold on. I'm gonna get this on camera.
Go ahead, you can record. Step out of the car, please.
It's being aggressive.
The officers tell him that he matches the description of someone who had committed a burglary in the area. Jamal tries to stop them from reaching inside. He even tries to tell them that he won't speak unless he gets a lawyer. Jamal repeatedly told the cops to call their supervisors.
Sir, you need to call your supervisor. Call your supervisor. Call your supervisor.
Over here on Paso Verde.
Call your supervisor.
As he was in shock at the amount of force they were using. They got into his car and roughed him up. One of the sheriff's deputies even took out a taser gun and threatened to tase him.
Give me your hand.
I don't give you consent to touch me.
Don't reach.
I don't give you consent to touch me.
Don't reach.
I don't give you consent.
Handcuff here.
I don't give you
We're
consent.
gonna be on Paso Verde.
What's curious in this instance is that the description that the cops get of the suspect was nothing like that of Jamal. The police were told that the burglary suspect was dressed in all black with a red t-shirt under the jacket, while Jamal had a maroon sweatshirt and gray sweatpants. But not only this, they were told that the suspect was 20 years old when Jamal is 40 years old. It's pretty clear that these police officers had messed up big time, and their actions made the incident much worse. The deputies dumped Jamal on the ground and got on top of him to handcuff him. In an interview later, Jamal retells his ordeal, saying that at the moment he couldn't even process what was going on and said, I was seriously fearing for my life.
Other police officer opens the passenger side car door, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, is this really happening? It's very surreal when I'm going through all this, right? And I'm seriously like fearing for my life. At this point, I agree. Like in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll get out, but let me record, right? So I have my smartphone on my right hand, right? And I'm, messing with my phone to get the camera on. But that's when the police officer on the passenger side grabbed onto my right hand. And that's when they start to pull me out of my vehicle, try to rip me out of my vehicle. And that's when I seriously feared for my life.
A supervisor pulls up soon after, and the deputies try to tell him the watered-down version of what actually happened. They then tell Jamal had matched the description of the burglary suspect and was not being cooperative and was resisting, so they had to take him down. They also told the supervisor that one of the deputies had suffered an injury on his shoulder as well. At this point, over a dozen cops had arrived at the scene. They were trying to get him to talk and identify himself. Now, why didn't they think of that before they roughed him up, dragged him out of the car, threatened to take him, took him down, got on top of him, and bound his hands and feet?
Give me your hand. I don't give you consent to touch me. Don't reach. I don't give you consent to touch me. Don't reach. I don't give you consent.
Handcuff here.
I don't give you consent.
We're going to be on Paso Verde and Santa Bianca.
Record that. Hey, stop. Let go of the cuffs, dude.
It's his shirt that's cut on it.
I got my side.
Cuffs are on. Cuffs are on.
Okay.
Readjust here a little bit. Readjust.
Slow down a little bit.
They finally realized that they may have gotten hold of the wrong man, but instead of apologizing to him and letting him go, they kept him handcuffed and transferred him to the back of another police car, but not before one of the deputies went ahead and searched Jamal's car without his consent to look for a mask or gloves.
I'm going to research the vehicle and see if the mask that the suspect was seen on picture that was taken by the informant is inside the car. So I'm going to be looking for that mask specifically one more time, see if it's inside the vehicle.
When they couldn't place the burglary charge on Jamal, they arrested him and booked Jamal on charges of obstruction and resisting. Jamal filed a formal complaint against the LA Sheriff's Department, but as luck would have it, they self-investigated the case themselves and the deputies were found not guilty of any wrongdoing. But Jamal Williams was not about to let the sheriff deputies go scot-free and later filed a civil lawsuit against them. The attorneys in this instance reported that Jamal's case was strong and that the LA Sheriff's Department would have to pay for their crimes sooner or later. Racial profiling and the disproportionate use of police force are controversial potential issues. According to an article from the Center of Crime and Justice Study, it comes with heavy costs for those targeted. Profiling exacts a high price on individuals, groups, and communities that are singled out for disproportionate police attention. For the individual singled out, stopped, and detained, the experience, often of frequent repeated encounters with the police, can be frightening and demeaning. Racial profiling stigmatizes whole groups, reinforcing and fueling racial tensions, and contributing to the overrepresentation of ethnic minorities in other parts of the criminal justice system. Racial profiling damages police-community relations, undermining trust and confidence, and deterring cooperation. The next case involving Patrick Mumford certainly does no favors to the falling police credibility and makes us question the role of law enforcement in our society even further. Patrick Mumford was just getting back home when he was confronted by police officers who told him they had arrest warrants against him. What they didn't realize was that they had confronted a completely different individual, and they didn't even bother to check before manhandling him.
What's your name? I'm going to ask you one more time. We probably need to talk to you. So, what's your name? Patrick. Stand up. Turn around, put your hands in the car. What happened?
Patrick was clearly stunned and didn't know how to respond to the sudden developments. He still managed to give the officers his name, which in any scenario should have at least made the officers stop and ask for his ID. But instead, the officers decide to use force.
Man, what I do? Y'all ain't telling me what I do, man. You got a warrant. He just came back from his probation officer.
I got taser. You coming out? You coming out? Come out.
get your hands out now. You got 3 seconds.
Hold on, man.
3 seconds.
Hold
Do not
on.
reach. Get up. Put your hands on the car.
Show me the warrant.
Come out.
Show me the warrant.
2. Fine, take me.
Alright, move. You coming out or not?
Man, y'all ain't even
Stand back.
Come out, you got a warrant.
I'm not telling you again.
You better get out of the car.
Y'all ain't let me know what's
Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
The behavior of the officers was shocking, to say the least. Not only did they not try to identify the individual to check whether he was actually the suspect they were looking for, they openly decided to manhandle him. One of the officers in question even pointed a taser gun at Patrick and started to threaten him if he didn't surrender in the next 3 seconds, he would tase him. Patrick kept pleading to the officers about his innocence. He even asked the officers about the reason for his arrest and told them to show him the warrant. But the officers were in no mood to listen to the young man.
Show me the warrant.
Come out.
Show me the warrant.
2. Fine, take me.
Alright, move. You coming out or not?
Man, y'all ain't even let me know what's going on.
Come out, you got a
I'm
warrant.
not telling you again.
You better get out of the car.
Y'all ain't let me know what's
Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
They went on to tase him, drag him out of the car, handcuff him, and then question him. And what's even more crazy is that all of this happened in just 38 seconds from the moment they met Patrick. According to the cops in their report, Patrick was given numerous chances to comply, but he refused to do so and physically actively resisted. But even after they had tased him, they still didn't stop manhandling him. They took him outside and roughed him up even more to search his belongings. They checked his back pockets for any concealed weapons, but predictably they didn't find anything of value on him except his wallet. Luckily for Patrick, the cops found his ID in his wallet and finally realized that they had indeed gotten a hold of the wrong guy. The police officer then told Patrick that he was clear and not the guy they were looking for. The dirty cop even accused Patrick that it was his fault that he did not tell the officers his name and identification, and that they had mistook him for the suspect because both of them looked similar.
Is there someone here that stays here that looks like you? Think about it.
Hey, Jack. Yeah. Guess what he's looking for?
Tell him. Who does he look a lot like?
I don't know.
He knows who it is.
So who is it?
Michael?
He is not Michael.
Okay, I know that now.
Oh, they thought it was my son?
Yes!
Really? They don't even look nothing alike?
And then besides, they didn't even have
that we got, they look exactly.
Oh, wow. I'm looking at that picture. I mean,
It's not far off. Okay, are we wrong?
But clearly, in the 38 seconds of the one-sided tussle between the cops and Patrick, the cops didn't even ask for his ID even once. In a report, the cops also stated that Patrick began to retreat inside the vehicle as if reaching for a weapon. The cops, realizing that they had messed up big time, began to cover up and told Patrick that it was just a case of mistaken identity and misunderstanding, while still manhandling him and pinning him to the hood of the car. They now began to panic and started spouting nonsense that the suspect and Patrick looked alike, clearly hoping to convince other bystanders that they were not completely in the wrong. But they couldn't be any further from the truth since no one believed their nonsense and outrageous behavior. Patrick was initially charged with obstruction and violating probation and risked losing his career. Thankfully, justice was served and an internal investigation into the actions of the police officers held all the officers guilty of not following proper procedure. The 4 officers were immediately suspended and Patrick was awarded with a settlement of $100,000. Wouldn't it be nice if the cops were the ones that actually had to pay these settlements instead of the city and the taxpayers? According to a report on police brutality by Amnesty International, at its worst, unlawful use of force by police can result in people being deprived of their right to life. If a police force is unnecessary or excessive, it may also amount to torture or other ill treatment. Unlawful force by police can also violate the right to be free from discrimination, the right to liberty and security, and the right to equal protection under the law. The most important thing to remember is this: it is the utmost obligation of state authorities, including police, to respect and protect the right to life. While it remains to be seen if there is political will to do so, communities and those on the receiving end of profiling and brutality continue to protest the need for change. The next case exemplifies the problem of officers in uniform going above and beyond their authority and thinking that they are above the law. On March 4, 2022, Paulding County, Georgia, at approximately 6 a.m., Deputy Michael McMaster of the Paulding County Sheriff's Office responded to a report of a suspicious person. who was wearing a hoodie and a backpack, attempting to break into a vehicle in the Evans Mill subdivision. A short time later, Deputy McMaster arrived at the location and observed 30-year-old Tyler Canary walking along the roadside at the entrance to the subdivision. Canary, who was wearing a hoodie and a backpack, appeared to match the description of the suspect that was provided by dispatch. He immediately proceeds to detain Tyler without even asking for his identification. This is a highly irregular move from the officer, as he simply picked up a guy from the roadside and detained him, assuming he was the suspect.
Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. These your hands in your pockets. Turn up your jeans, baby.
Excuse me.
You're being detained, bud. Don't take your backpack off. Take your backpack off.
Excuse me. What am I doing?
Take your backpack off.
Can you explain what this is
Before
for?
you go on the ground, take your backpack off.
I'm going to get picked up for work.
Come on. Since we want to play this game.
Sir.
Tyler tried asking the officer what this was all about, but the officer was not responding to his queries and simply went on about removing his backpack. The officer even gave Tyler a warning to comply with him or else he would end up on the ground.
Can you tell me what's going on?
Just put your hands behind your back before you end up on the ground.
I'm trying to drop my phone. Hello?
Things went from highly irregular to absolutely crazy in the next moment as the officer told Tyler that he was being detained since he matched the description of someone trying to break into a car, and then body slammed him onto the road, even when Tyler was not trying to resist whatsoever.
Are you telling me what this is about?
You're being detained for a minute. You're matching the description of someone trying to break into people's cars.
I'm not breaking anyone's car. No!
Tyler couldn't believe what had happened and began crying in pain. Another police officer joined Officer Michael McMaster and pinned the already prone Tyler, who had now suffered injuries. The two officers then forcibly handcuffed Tyler and lifted him up to take him into the back of the police van. Officer McMaster then gets Tyler's backpack and begins searching it for whatever reason. He yells at Tyler to shut up and act like a man. After realizing that he may have made a mistake, Officer McMaster then proceeded to blame the victim and told him that it was Tyler's fault for not complying to the officer's orders. The officer told Tyler that he was putting him under arrest for obstruction.
Well, you're under arrest for obstruction, at least.
How? I literally just
You didn't want to fucking listen. Put your hands behind your back. That's simple. Then I told you you're going to end up on the ground. You still didn't do that. Then your ass ended up on the ground, didn't it?
I wasn't trying to.
You wasn't trying to. How old are you?
Please.
How old are you?
I'm 29.
You're older than me. Act like a fucking man.
I'm just trying to get to work. I'm seriously not trying to do anything, please.
Technically, what Officer McMaster says to Tyler may be correct, but he neglects the fact that Tyler was not in fact obstructing him, but more so it didn't warrant Officer McMaster to slam Tyler onto the ground. The officer tries to find any evidence that might implicate Tyler, but he couldn't find any. He then tries to justify his actions once again, but couldn't. He even seems pretty pleased about the fact that he slammed Tyler onto the ground when he tells the medics what had happened. He quotes that, "I got boo-boos too, so I'm okay."
Oh, okay.
See if you got any of my shit.
Right?
My wife likes to leave her car unlocked.
I don't think he actually got into a car. I dropped him on his head right there.
Oh, okay, cool.
I got boo-boos too, so I'm okay. But yeah, he's in the back of my car. Just make sure he's...
Canary was evaluated on the scene by medical personnel. He was then transported to the hospital by the sheriff's office for medical evaluation, where it was found that he had suffered multiple fractures, head injuries, and a fractured eardrum. Sheriff's officials say it was later determined that Canary was not breaking into cars, but he was charged with obstruction of justice and is still facing those charges. A full year after the tape was released, Deputy Michael McMaster was terminated from the sheriff's department and was found to have a long history of reprimands for aggressive behavior. It was reported later that Tyler was suing Michael McMaster and the Paulding County Sheriff for violation of his civil rights. According to a study on police corruption and its consequences, there has been a debate regarding the severity of police corruption that intensifies over time during a police officer's career. It argues that police officers may begin accepting minor gratuities, such as free coffee or discounted meals, near the outset of their career and gradually engage in more serious forms of police corruption. In other words, new recruits internalize values from their experienced partner or trainer and adopt these similar habits that intensify with time. But to think that the entire system is flawed and that there are no honest police officers trying to uphold the law, our next case will prove otherwise. This police officer is standing up for all the law-abiding citizens, even if he has to go up against one of his own fellow officers. On June 6, 2023 in Florida, a police body cam footage captured the moments when Orlando police officer Alexander Shawnee led a sheriff's deputy on a high-speed chase. The sheriff's deputy found Officer Shawnee exceeding the speed limit by almost double. He chased the officer's police car and asked to pull over. Initially, it seemed that Officer Shawnee was going to stop his car, but he went on a little further till he had to make a stop after the deputy turned on his police lights. When the deputy confronted Officer Shawnee about it, the officer showed absolutely no regard for rules or his fellow officer and started to shout at him, "I'm going to work, man. Since when is it okay for a police officer to go 80 on a 45 just because he's going to work?"
You gonna pull over?
Please say a command.
Pull over. 3113 to 313.
What? I am going into work, my man. Why are you trying to pull me over as I'm going into work?
Because you're going 80 and a 45.
I am going into work.
Okay, what are you going to work for?
What does it look like I am dressed for?
What
does it look like I am dressed for?
My name is Deputy Hilton and I see your driver's license.
No.
Okay.
Officer Shawnee is showcasing the perfect example of someone who thinks he's above the law, just because he has some amount of authority. Unless he's going to an emergency, simply driving to work isn't an excuse to go double the speed limit. As a cop, he's supposed to keep the public safe, not endanger them. Later, a news report confirmed that Alexander Shawnee had been relieved of his duties pending a criminal and internal investigation. Nobody is above the law, especially those who have a duty to uphold it. In all cases of police use of lethal force or police corruption or misuse of authority should be subject to a thorough, independent, impartial, and transparent investigation. And if the evidence indicates that the practice was unlawful, the police officer responsible should be duly prosecuted. A blatant example of this can be seen in the next case, which will cut deep into your soul. On January 23rd in Seattle, police officer Kevin Dave receives a call from dispatch about a possible drug overdose taking place. On his way to the scene of the crime, he runs over a 23-year-old female college student, Janavi Kandula, which results in her death. The officer in question is not even quick to get out of the car here and did not sound panicked or remorseful at all after hitting an innocent pedestrian. Moreover, he even sounded a touch annoyed while calling emergency services. Officer Dan Odir, who is the vice president of the Seattle Police Officers Guild, arrives at the scene to evaluate the situation, and soon after leaving can only be heard on his body cam laughing about the incident. The lack of empathy shown here by Officer Dan is just jaw-dropping. He was even laughing while talking to his fellow colleague on the phone, saying that the young girl was a regular person, 26 years old and not of much value, and that a check of $11,000 should suffice.
I think she went up on the hood, hit the windshield, then when he hit the brakes, flew off the car. But she is dead. No, it's a regular person. Yeah, just write a check. Yeah, $11,000. She was 26 anyway. She had limited value.
After the tape was released and owing much to the outcry of the public, Seattle police released a statement that Officer Odir had been reassigned to a non-administrative position, a shockingly small price to pay for laughing over a regular person's death. The audacity and cruelty shown by the officer over mocking someone's death deserved a harsher punishment. According to an article published in Amnesty International, civil society organizations have long been calling for police reform. They propose that the Congress and all 50 states should pass laws to limit the use of lethal force by the police. Additionally, the Department of Justice should conduct oversight of law enforcement agencies that have a history of violating human rights. But it still remains to be seen whether it will actually be implemented or if anyone even cares enough to make a difference.